Okay, today is June the 9th. It's Tuesday, and I'm here at St. Joseph's, was it elementary school?
Yes.
In Hamilton, Ontario. And Mr. Mielko, by his invitation, I'm presenting Career Day to the grade 8ers. There's 4 groups of grade 8 students, and I'm looking forward to this.
Absolutely.
I want to thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Appreciate it. Thank you for coming.
This is great. Guys, my name is Michael Desmatzik. I'm the father of Nicholas and Christopher, but I've abbreviated my name to DMNikas only because I've published a book back in 2002, and the book has my full name, and everybody since that book was calling me Michael Nikas because it was much easier for them to remember the name than to have to spell Desmatzik. Forget the notes. How will you be able to measure your success in your life? Suppose that you're much older and you look back and you say, hey, how was my life? Did I do a good job? Am I happy? How will you be able to know? Just tell me, anybody, throw some answers.
If you
Go ahead.
how happy you are.
It's a good one. I'm successful because I have freedom. I have freedom to work or not work. I have freedom to choose what I do. I have freedom to come and go. I have freedom of what I wear. I have freedom. No one questions what I do, provided that I do the right things. I'm not going to do anything criminal. But provided that I pursue my dreams, I can get up in the morning at 6 or 11 or 12 or sleep in or whatever I want to do. That to me is the ultimate measurement of success, is my freedom. Statistically, those of us who love what we do, we live longer. If you love what you do, artists, musicians tend to live longer. Like we tend to live in our 90s, 100s. How old am I, guys? All right, it's close enough. I'm 64. Because at the end of my speech, I'm not going to try and convince you to be a photographer. I'm going to try and convince you to do what you enjoy. It doesn't matter what it is you select, as long as it's something you choose and you enjoy. It doesn't matter. Like, I'm doing what I'm enjoying, but I'm not saying be a photographer, although that's a good option. Because of the people that we know from years gone by, we know musicians, we know painters, we know writers. How many of us remember politicians from the 1400s or whatever? We know Shakespeare, we know Rembrandt. We know people that left their mark because of what they did in their lives. So when I look at my own life, I look at it as a book. That this is my life, and this could be your life too. How many pages does your book have? How many pages do you think you'll have in your book? I'm figuring mine has 10. And every page, in my opinion, that's like from 1 to 10, 10 to 20. That's my age, the 30, 40. I'd say the first 20 years, you do what your teachers tell you to do, you do what your parents tell you to do. You don't pretty well have much of a life decision or choices up until now. Because you're here not because you want to be here, you're here because you have to be here. But later on, when you turn to be whatever, 20, 25, 30, or make choice as to what school you go to, what career you pursue, that life is yours to do with as you please. It'll be your life to decide whether you'll measure it with your degree of freedom or with your degree of financial success, or you may save a life or invent something or do something significant. Because at the end of your life, it's not going to last forever. I don't know if you're going to live to be 90, 100, but there'll be an end. And we'll all be buried, and we'll be done, and somebody will think of us and say, oh, who was that? What did they do? You know what I'm saying? Like with me, I'm thinking, okay, I've done something. I've put a book together. I traveled. This book cost me $300,000. Think about it. $300,000 today, you can buy a house. So I thought, well, do I buy a house or do I create something that I can leave a legacy or leave something for my children, my family, my friends, whatever, the world? So, I traveled, and I was born in Greece, by the way. Okay, whoever guesses the right age of when I came to Canada, okay, that's when you get the book. How old was I when I came to Canada? Quick. 12. So I was 12 years old. I was a young punk. I didn't know a word of English. People in my school taught me how to say all the nasty words, rat fink. They told me to bring a dart, a board, and throw darts at a current events board. And I thought, hey, this is cool. And I was doing it while the teacher walked in, and then of course I got to the office and was told the right from wrong. But I guess I eventually adjusted and learned. Where did I learn my photography? I'm self-taught. Did I go to school for it? No. Will your teachers want to hear that? Probably not. But it shows you one thing, in my case, that if you have a passion for anything, and nowadays with the internet the way it is, you can research, you can learn just about anything that you can dream of. I mean, your careers may not even be invented yet. You may be the ones to create something brand new. But in my case, when photography was thought of as one of those careers that wasn't a real job, you know, I might as well have been a ballet dancer or something else. Because I've been in business for how long? How many years have I been in photography? Another guess.
50.
Two more, 42 years. I've been doing photography for 42 years. If you think about it, that's probably older than some of your parents. And I was doing photography before digital. It was all analog. This book here was my last analog project. And I could tell exposures without a light meter. I got to the point I was so good, I can tell you what the camera needed to expose the film properly, because when I traveled, I didn't want to come back home and say, darn, that didn't work. I wanted to have every shot to be perfect. So even now, if you were to quiz me and tell me what exposure, you know, is in that corner or up there or outside, I can tell you. Like, so let me see how many of these people you think I've met and photographed. I don't know where it is. It's somewhere in here. You know, Elton John. Tell me how many of these people you think I photographed. Okay, I'll tell you, all of them. Elton John, Britney Spears, Prince Charles, Pierre Burton, Margaret Atwood, Pavarotti, George Cohen, who's the head of McDonald's. And that's just a short list. And it was because of that camera where I can go into their offices and photograph them and meet them. And you know, Margaret Atwood is a famous writer. I was in her closet picking a hat for her shoot. I was in Paris photographing for a magazine for airlines. So it became not a career, but a lifestyle. So when you think of selecting a career, think of it as a lifestyle, something you're prepared to devote everything. Like, I think photography all the time. In fact, I don't have to be recording this right now, but because I think eventually, you know, I'll need to repeat what I said now, might as well capture it. Might as well capture the moment, capture the memory.
What do you use?
All right, good question. The cameras that I use, I consider them as disposable. I don't ever get attached to one camera. And I'll tell you, back in the old days, I used to use the most expensive cameras that there were. There were Leicas and Hasselblads and all of those fancy cameras. But eventually, when digital came in, all of that became trash. I sold it on eBay. And so now I'll pick up any camera. You give me your Canon, your Pentax, your whatever, you know, Nikon, I'll use it. It's like, it's not the camera, it's the turkey behind it. I mean, it's what you do with it. It's like saying to Shakespeare, what kind of pen did you use? It's like saying to, you know, Picasso, what kind of brush are you using? It's a tool. Like, I wouldn't get too hung up on the type of camera. You know, a pinhole camera, it's a box with a little tiny hole in it, can give you amazing results if you know where to place it, how long to expose for, and what subject matter you want. You want to photograph the Civil War, or, you know, somebody having a wedding. You know what I mean? It's your subject matter that's more important than the camera itself. So I use a Canon. I use a Canon D6, and there's a Sony over there. So lately I've been using Canons and Sonys, only because one camera is better in low light, the other one is better with soft focus. So manufacturers will design tools, they try to give you everything, but they fall short. You know, they can only pack so much in a camera. So it depends on what you eventually want. So if you want to do wildlife photography, you want to have a camera that will give you long telephoto lenses so you're not within danger proximity to any wild animals, right? But in my case, I like things that are flat, compact, that I can keep in my pocket. Any other question? Come on, guys, I'm here for you. Yeah?
How did you get into photography?
Good question. I think I took a loan from the government to go to school for radio and television, and I used it to buy a camera. I used part of it anyway to buy a camera, and I made, my very first thing in photography was a slideshow called A Day in a Life. It was a day in the life of Hamilton. So I don't know, it just happened. I don't think it was a special gift from a parent or a relative that gave me a brownie and I became excited about it. I just wanted to capture something that, you know, was in my mind and I wanted to share with people. It's all about sharing an image for me. And you know, when you say to me, why bother making a book? Because if I was, say, you know, a portrait or wedding photographer, okay, it's a good career, but statistically, marriages don't last. Like maybe 50% will end up in some kind of divorce, and that album will probably end up in, you know, in mothballs or in the trash. But in this case, you know, it was a bestseller book. I sold like 5,000 of these in Canada, and internationally it was available in bookstores. It's all about sharing an image. It's all about sharing some vision. And I'll tell you, if you're on places like Instagram or anywhere where social media people share images, the quality of photography nowadays is phenomenal. Like the stuff that people who are amateurs, stuff that people are posting online is beyond what my professional colleagues have been able to do in the past. And that's because there's filters and the different apps that you can enhance, you can saturate, vignette, do all kinds of things with photography that we couldn't do in the old days. They used to say that a photograph's worth 1,000 words. And they used to also say that a camera never lies, but that's one of the bigger lies, because nowadays, cameras can lie. Photoshop, you can put people's faces in different bodies, do all kinds of stuff. But filters, yeah, I did use, and mostly for black and white photography. So in black and white photography, filters tend to subtract the color. So if you wanted a blue to be darker, I would use a yellow filter. So it was a complementary color that absorbed certain colors. And so nowadays I don't use filters. I just shoot the images raw and touch them up in Photoshop or Lightroom or any other software. So just do what you love, guys. Just pick something that you want to pursue and do it with full passion. No halfway about it. That's why when I asked you to turn around, I said turn right around, not halfway, because if you do anything, do it full. Yes?
Where have you traveled to take pictures?
I've done photography in the Caribbean mostly. We did a lot of resorts, places like Bahamas, Cuba, Dominican Republic. I've traveled to Greece, France, the US, a lot in the United States. I'm going to Calgary next week. But that's because my little passport, that camera, allows me to go places where most people wouldn't. Like I've done photography from helicopters and airplanes. I've done underwater photography. I've been in morgues where I photographed cadavers, that's dead people. I've been in surgery rooms where I photographed, surgeons doing reconstructive surgery, knees, hips, all that. So it's been a good education. And one of the best educations for me was working behind a one-way mirror at a family, child and family center at Shedorf McMaster Hospitals, where families would come in and they have problems, and they would talk about their problems, and they knew that I was recording them, and the psychiatrists would analyze those tapes, and they would get to the bottom of what the problem was. Say someone's mom and dad will bring a child and say, my child's hyperactive. And then by the time the conversation was over, they discovered that it was really the parents that were the issue. They didn't communicate properly. They didn't tell each other how they felt about things. And the child was left to bang away on toys and break things because he or she was frustrated. So that's one of the things that, to me, was the best education, using my trade. And I brought that to the rest of my life, so hopefully my whole family benefits from those experiences. But photography, that's what did it for me. I traveled, I met people, photographed famous people. Even though I'm not a stargazer, I can be in the same room with someone who's tremendously successful. Like I was in Paris photographing, and someone said, why don't you call Linda Evangelista? She was like one of the world's leading models. So I just brushed it off. I never bothered. I should have, but she was from St. Catharines. I could have photographed and gotten more mileage out of that assignment, and I didn't jump to that, because I had to do what I had to do, and I went with my own strength, not having to rely on a celebrity to make me famous. Questions, another one. Do we have, how much time do we have?
We're another 5.
5? Come on, guys, bombard me, anything. Okay, let me tell you, my lifestyle, because photography is something that I've embraced for my entire life, the thing for me is I need to stay healthy. I told you I'm 64 years old. I'm also going to tell you I've never been hospitalized. I've never had a surgery. I've never once touched drugs. I do work in Jamaica, and they have marijuana flying everywhere. People offer me to smoke up, drink up. I don't smoke, I don't drink. I've never done drugs, never touched anything in my life. Why? Because I've seen too many of my friends go down the tubes, die. I've been a pallbearer at friends' funerals because they were stupid. They would do things, ride a motorcycle, die. They're stupid. Drink, drive, die. So, I told you, there's my book of life. There's my life, it's blank. I write my own pages. I like to make it to that 10th page. I like to be 100. I want to be 110, really. So who stops me? Just me. I mean, you have to learn so much about your diet, your health, and the rest of it. You can't say, well, I'm a doctor, I'm a whatever, an accountant, a lawyer, a photographer. If you have ailing health, because I've never missed a day of work. Now, we're going to a job right after we finish this today. We're photographing in Toronto. We were there yesterday. We're going tomorrow. It's constantly, it's like a non-stop pendulum. And that's what excites me. That's why I want to share my enthusiasm for what I do with you. So again, I'm not telling you to be a photographer, I'm telling you to pursue your dream and do what makes you happy. That's like an exclamation mark at the end of my statement. Do what you enjoy and be the person you want to be and do the right things in your life. The book on Greece was something that I initiated. I wasn't hired by someone to do it. And you know how we're obsessed with our own age and beauty and cosmetic surgery and clothing and all that? Some of the people that I met during this trip were some of the most real people I ever want to encounter. You know, there were people that didn't care about their appearance. There are people that lived through wars, raised families, survived. You know, there's a woman here, and I'm looking for her picture. There's a woman here, there she is. She was the happiest soul here. She's a baker, she owns a bakery, that's her daughter. Do you think she cared? She didn't have all her teeth. Do you think she cared whether she had an extra wrinkle or whether she looked maybe, you know, a week older than her real age? Yeah, with some makeup, she can look a week younger. It didn't really matter to her because she was real, and that's what I enjoy. I enjoy doing real, like we're doing a film on Sunday, and it's called Sheet Meat. It's about artificially produced meat. So that gives you an idea of my schedule. It's always busy. In the summertime, we run music concerts out in Cape Breton Island. So we don't sit around and wait for someone to tell us or tell me what they need done. I just do it. So, but with my passion, I'll tell you, you know what, there's always a shortfall to everything. You know, no one's perfect. You know, if you ask Nick, that's my son, Nicholas Desmatic, he'll tell you that I yell. I tend to yell a lot. That's like something that I can't control. Because if something isn't done right, I get frustrated, you know, because I got so much energy bundled up that, you know what I mean? But I'm not nasty, but you know what I'm saying, like, get your room cleaned. Wear your slippers. Don't forget your lunch. We don't want to drive it to your school, that kind of stuff. As with everything I've done in those travel assignments, most of my trips were paid for. Because every time I would go to Greece, I would call up a magazine or a newspaper and I'll say, hey, I'm going to Greece. Do you want anything done while I'm there? So the Globe and Mail paid for my trip once. Another company paid for my trip another time. Hotels I stayed at were complimentary because I did photography there while I was there. So I could only go for 2 weeks at a time. That's what I had to cover as much of that countryside, you know, whether it's the mainland or the islands. I still haven't done it all. I mean, I was hoping to do maybe 1 or 2 more, but it's just not practical. Not with the economy the way things are in Europe and in Greece in specific.
Do you plan on retiring?
No. Retirement doesn't exist in my vocabulary. I may shift gears and do something different, but I mean, technically, I'm retired next February. But you know, nowadays people don't hang up their hat that easy. You know, especially when you do something that doesn't require physical. You know, I don't have to risk my life by working the rigs or, you know, climbing somewhere where I might fall and slip. So it's relatively safe what I do. Am I done?
Thank you so much. That was awesome.
Thank you. Thank you.